Former state attorney general, former lieutenant governor, former deputy prosecutor, all of the above. Doug Chin here with us. Want to pick your brain purely from the legal standpoint, because obviously when it comes to divorce, it's devastating. But legally, what could this mean for their upcoming trial for bank fraud?
Right. Well, first of all, just as you said, I mean, any sort of family transition like this could happen for any number of reasons, of which most of them are none of our business. From a purely legal standpoint, when a couple gets divorced, it does change a few things. One, it's not going to necessarily change what the evidence is that comes out at the trial, but as a general rule in federal court, the privilege that a spouse can assert against somebody else that makes them not able to testify against each other, that goes away. Once a couple is divorced. They actually have to be completely divorced, but that would be something that could happen. But again, we don't know until we actually find out. I mean, I think one of the things that I want to be very sensitive to is that there could be a number of reasons why this is taking place, most of it which is not something that's really our concern.
I think a lot of people want to know, why now?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, you know, again, I mean, I think that's something that's really hard to second guess. I mean, this happens for so many different reasons, but I think that in terms of the actual trial itself, you know, I think you'll definitely see is that there might be some jockeying in terms of like what they're allowed to testify about or what they're allowed to talk about. I think the other thing that helps is the fact that this bank fraud trial won't be in front of a jury, because that would be just yet another fact that would have to be vetted with all the people of the public to make sure that they're not going to use that either to be sympathetic towards them or to hold it against the couple.
Sure. So let's talk about former police chief Louis K. Aloha for his defense. What are his options? Will he testify against Catherine? Will he strike a plea deal? What do you think?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's the other thing is that if they're no longer together in terms of what they're, you know, in terms of their relationship, they might be going in different directions in terms of how they want to be pursuing their options. So just as you talked about, if there's some sort of plea bargain to be struck, that might be something that they would be considering. But we'll have to see what happens when the trial happens.
So their bank fraud trial, not until January, but we already went through the hoopla that was their corruption case. Will this affect their sentencing?
I don't think so. In other words, I think the judge will be bound by certain standards and just restrictions that he needs to follow in terms of what sentencing is going to be. And I think even the lawyers will probably steer clear of this issue. Again, this is a criminal case. It's not necessarily a civil matter, so we're not so much talking about finances and what happens to their finances or things like that. We're really talking about whether or not they're going to what the actual jail sentence is going to be, if I could say it so crassly. But that's basically what we'd be talking about. I
just have one last question for you. You know, for the longest time, we have always considered Louis K. Aloha and Catherine K. Aloha as one. Now that they're, I guess, a separate entity, perhaps, will they be tried separately? Now that, you know, will that come up?
Oh, I don't think that's necessarily the case. In other words, I think the fact that the circumstances around this trial are all sort of related to each other, that was really the basis for why the case was brought against both of them instead of them separately. It wasn't the argument that they were husband and wife. The argument was that all the facts kind of surrounded the same issue. So even if they're not married, that's not necessarily going to affect it.
Former lieutenant governor, former deputy prosecutor, former attorney general, we always like to hear your perspective. Thank you so much.
Right.
Sending it
Sad day.
Yeah. Sending it over to Lauren.